My name is Pete, and I love reviewing the latest and greatest tech, like forcing myself to try new things. iPhone, Android, Apple, Microsoft, Google. I get this weird, immense pleasure from putting myself in, I guess we'd call them, uncomfortable tech positions. So last year, when the M3 Max MacBook Pro came out, I overspent, and I picked one up because, well, I always thought I needed the latest, the highest spec, most expensive model Mac that exists because, well, productivity. And I'm not ashamed to admit it, but I was really, really wrong. So look, last year, I tried my first Snapdragon powered laptop and I really didn't get on with it. From its really poor battery life, some frustrating limitations, it just overall wasn't a very good experience. But I did say,
but I think I'm going to give it maybe another 6 months or so and then see just like the lay of the land.
And then I try it again. So when ASUS reached out and asked if they could send me the latest Snapdragon powered laptop, I said yes, but only on the condition that I can review it the way that I want to review it. Like a normal person, students, parents, grandparents, the kind of people who just buy a laptop and just need it to work. Not putting it through benchmark tools and doing these side-by-side comparisons and that seem to get a lot of attention in this tech bubble on the internet. So I have been using this laptop for a few weeks now, and here are my own thoughts on what using this brand new ASUS Zenbook A14 is actually like as a normal person. Well, normal person with a weird haircut, but normal person. Okay, so first things first, let's talk specs because we need to know what we're working with here. So this is the ASUS Zenbook A14. It is a 14-inch laptop with an OLED display. It also has Windows Hello built in with no silly notch at the top there. There is a Snapdragon X processor with 16 gig of memory and a 1 terabyte SSD. We do also have HDMI 2.1 ports, 2 USB-C and a headphone port on one side, and a single USB-A port on the other side. And it weighs less than 1 kilogram, which means it's even lighter than a MacBook Air. And this is the big reason that I wanted to check out this laptop, because it has become very apparent to me through all of the traveling I've done in the past few months, Hawaii with Snapdragon, Dubai with Huawei, Vegas for CES, San Jose for Samsung Unpacked, that this very, very thick MacBook Pro really weighs your bag down over time. So actually, I've been desperately waiting for Apple to drop their, new M4 MacBook Airs so I can trade up for a, lighter, still powerful machine with great battery life. And that again is really why this Asus Zenbook A14 intrigued me so much here. It is lighter than a MacBook Air, on paper has incredible battery life, and of course the Snapdragon X chip in here is like Apple Silicon's moment, but for Windows. So for this machine to stand a chance at replacing my current MacBook Pro, oh, and by the way, this skin, I keep getting asked this in my videos, I always forget to drop the link. This is just like a random dbrand skin, by the way. But for this Asus Zenbook to replace my MacBook Pro, then it needs to keep up with everything that I need a laptop to do. So that means it needs to be comfortable to use, be light enough to travel with, the battery life needs to be incredible, the whole Windows versus Mac thing too, and also the pricing needs to be reasonable. So we're going to run through those 5 points here and just see how we get on. Starting with, of course, the first one, which is just keeping up with everything I need a laptop to do. So like I said, I always went for the biggest, the baddest, the most expensive laptop that I could, because as a professional, I always wanted just the best of the best. I didn't want something slowing me down from, doing my work. But we're at the stage now where Apple are stuffing an M4 chip into everything, like even an iPad when it's kind of not really needed. But these new Snapdragon chips, there is really something to them. So my typical use case for a laptop is like ton of web browsing with like millions of tabs open at once, emails, calendars, music, Slack, Discord, Google Drive, you're watching videos, writing documents in Google Docs. And then outside of that, there's a tiny portion of what I'd call like the power user stuff, like DaVinci for video editing, the Adobe suite for things like Photoshop and a bit of Lightroom editing. And all of this, it has been able to keep up with without slowing down. Now, I wouldn't recommend you use this if your main work is more towards those like power user tasks, like the video editing side of things. But for short form video editing, like TikTok and Instagram Reels, or for the odd Lightroom photo, it has been pretty faultless. Now, as a, again, normal user, there is something you should be aware of, and I'm going to try and not get too technical here, but because this is running a Snapdragon chip instead of an Intel chip, it's actually running a slightly different version of Windows, which is like made for ARM or made for ARM. Still made by Windows, so it's still like fully supported, and all that good stuff. But that means that to get the best performance and the best battery life out of this thing, then ideally you want to install the native ARM versions of apps, which, again, as a normal person, you wouldn't know, but you can just install regular apps mostly just fine. Like, they'll just run in this like compatibility mode instead, which is absolutely seamless to most people. You wouldn't even know that it's happening. Now, from all of the apps I've installed, only 2 I've had problems with. The first was Google Drive, which thankfully they released an ARM native version, which works absolutely fine. And DaVinci, which again also has a native version, both of which installed works absolutely fine. So what I'm saying here is that as an average consumer, buying one of these new like Snapdragon powered laptops, the good news is that things are much, much better now than they were even a few months ago when I last tried a Snapdragon laptop, when I remember my advice would have been, and was at the time, to hold off, don't buy one yet, and just wait and see what happens. And now we seem to have waited, and it's definitely improved. Now, the next test number 2 was, is it comfortable to use? And this was a really easy one. Yes, super comfortable to use. It is so light that every time I go to pick it up, it just amazes me at like how much technology they can squeeze into such the thin and lightweight form factor. So when throwing this into my backpack and using it out and about, and especially when I'm traveling, it is surprising how noticeable the difference is between my current M3 Max MacBook Pro, which weighs, I think, like about 1.5 kgs, to this, which weighs under 1 kg. Now, they've also used this really like soft to the touch material. I had to look this up online, but they call it Ceraluminum. And so far, it's held up really, really well. There's not been really any or many scratches on it. It's really good resistance to oily fingerprint marks. I don't know if you can see any there, but there's basically no real marks on there at all. And the keyboard experience, also really good. It's a backlit keyboard too. The only issues I have with it is there's the enter key, which lots here in the UK have a bigger return key on them. So I keep accidentally hitting the hashtag key instead, but that might be just a me thing, and that is something I've been getting better with over time as my kind of fingers learn the patterns where I'm meant to be typing. Touchpad, also great. There is actually a handy utility included where you can customize the touchpad along with other areas of the laptop, but simple gestures like controlling the brightness and controlling the volume from the touchpad gestures are a nice touch. And then we get onto battery life, which I won't lie, seeing them claim a 32-hour battery life in video playback and 19 and a half hours in general web browsing. Yeah, right. But actually, it has been pretty awesome in day-to-day use. Like, genuinely, this was my biggest issue with the last Snapdragon powered laptop that I reviewed. Like, yeah, performance was great, everything was great on it, but the battery life sucked on it so hard. Now, I don't know why it is so good on this laptop. Perhaps it's just more apps are being updated to work with the Snapdragon chip, but you can comfortably get through a full day, even multiple days on one charge. Like, I actually charged this up fully yesterday morning, used it for the entire day, tried to run it down, and we are still, like right now, only on 35% remaining. So I've still got probably a good full day's worth of use. And because Windows just tells you, screen time in the, I think it's like 24 hours or 7 days average, it's kind of not that helpful. But if I take those figures and multiply them out, it looks like a good 14-hour plus on battery life. And like I said, that's with me not even trying to save battery, other than like the machine kicking into its like battery saving mode at, it's like 15 or 20% or so. So battery life, very, very, very impressive. And then we have the whole Mac versus Windows thing. And look, I'm not going to go that deep into this because that's a whole like other discussion. Now, it's cool if you're a Mac user and you like your Macs, then absolutely fine. As a Windows user though, you've got Windows Hello, so you can actually sign into Windows using your face, a la like Face ID. There's no notch at the top as well, and it works using infrared, so it even works at night and in the dark. You've also got apps like Phone Link, so you can see your phone's like notifications, reply to messages, browse and transfer photos, even take phone calls via your laptop. It has taken me a very long time to untangle myself from using an iPhone like day to day, and I still have some work to do untangling myself from Mac apps like Apple Notes and Fantastical Calendar. But some steps that have helped me are moving over to cross-platform apps that work on everything from iOS, Android, Mac, and Windows. So I use Missive as my email client. I just sign in once and it brings all of my email accounts onto all my devices. I've started using Motion for my calendar lately. Not only does it have some pretty cool like scheduling AI kind of features, but it's also one of the very few calendar apps that actually works properly with Apple Calendar, again, on all the platforms, so iOS, Android, Mac, and Windows. Using Brave as my web browser, Slack and Discord for messaging, Google for my documents. So I'm getting there, slowly, one by one. And then the last point, which I mentioned about deciding whether this is something I can actually recommend to you, is that the pricing needs to be reasonable. Like, we've always given Apple a hard time over the price gouging, like literal price gouging they do across their whole range of products. The MacBook Air is no different. Like, the base MacBook Air comes with 256 gig of storage, and then to upgrade that to 1 terabyte, equivalent to this, costs £400. To upgrade it to 2 terabytes is £800. That is just insanity. Now, coincidentally, the Zenbook A14 starts off at the same price, but already comes with a 1 terabyte SSD, which unfortunately you can't upgrade at the point of ordering, but it is user upgradable. So you can just buy a 2 terabyte SSD, pop off the cover and add more storage for around like a quarter, less than a quarter of the price of an Apple upgrade, which is just insane. Like, I'm so glad user upgradable components are still a thing, at least over on the Windows side of things. Just having upgradable memory and upgradable storage makes so much sense. So with all of that said, like, what's the bad stuff? Because I've actually surprised myself here with not having really anything bad to say about this device yet. But there are a few things. Windows Hello can be slower signing in sometimes than just typing in your passwords. Being that it runs Windows, having to just deal with Microsoft updates, again, can be kind of annoying. I also had an issue where Zoom would just freeze right after I installed it, but that just disappeared after I reboot. And the speakers are just like, they're just okay. Like, put next to my MacBook Pro, it's no comparison. But even my M4 iPad Pro sounds better, surprisingly to me. Oh, I feel like absolute death. Just the last week, this like whole flu cold thing's been just doing the rounds, and I've got it, felt better, got it again. I feel horrendous. But anyway, what laptop review isn't complete without mentioning those two letters, AI. Now, this is a Copilot Plus laptop. This is a whole thing with the new Snapdragon powered laptops, is they are, officially co-branded with Microsoft to run the Copilot AI kind of software suite. So with that, there are some new features which are now available to you. One of which is this feature called Recall, which trying to figure out how to explain this, but essentially it's like looking at your screen all the time and almost like monitoring what you're doing. So you can then at any point just search for like anything and it will go, oh, YouTube. Yes, you were watching YouTube at 6 o'clock yesterday and here are the things you were watching. Or, if you wanted to recall an email that you couldn't quite remember what it was, but it was an email you were writing yesterday about 3 p.m. or something, you're like, what email was I writing? And you can kind of give it that stuff and it will just go and search through. Now, it does this by taking snapshots like constantly throughout whilst you're using it. Now, the other feature I've been playing with, and I was playing a lot last night, is I have a list of, I've been trying to do this for a while. This has been like my test to see whether AI is actually like any good or not. And this is essentially where I have, I invest monthly in various shares and stocks and shares and those kind of things. And I've been trying to find something for a while, and one of these AI platforms where I can just give it my like CSV data and it will just look through, it will like tell me how much my stocks and shares are worth, like how much it's gone up and gone down and all that kind of stuff. And so this is like my current benchmark of like, is AI good enough? Because so far, nothing has yet been able to do what I want it to do. Now, so far, I will give it to Copilot. It has gotten the closest with the least amount of work. So there's some of my data and some dummy data in here as well. And essentially, there's a list of like all the stocks and shares I bought, the dates I bought them, the prices I bought them at, and all those kind of things. And I just wanted, first of all, to calculate the number of shares that I own for each share. And broadly speaking, it is almost correct. It's slightly miscalculated, but it's only miscalculated by a few shares rather than like thousands of shares, which other AI platforms I've tried have done. Secondly was to look up the pricing and make sure that, you know, how much, am I a millionaire yet? That kind of stuff. And so it looked up the price. The Copilot built into Excel. So this is the whole like Copilot works with Excel, with Word, with Outlook. There's Copilot on the laptop itself. And so the Copilot built into Excel cannot look up the current prices for stocks. However, if I then open up the actual Copilot on the laptop, the software here, it goes, yeah, sure, I can look up the prices for you. And here are their current prices. And so it's a bit confusing why it can't do that within like Microsoft Excel's version of Copilot when it can do it within the Microsoft Copilot, if that makes sense. But it did that. And when I switched over to the Microsoft Copilot version, it was then quite quickly and easily able to look up the prices, look up the number of shares, and then do the calculations. And then if you really wanted to, you can also ask it to like plot out some charts and like, here's a list of all the shares you own, and, you know, plot out some bar graphs and those kind of things. All of this without you having to know how to Excel and how to Word and how to Outlook and how to PowerPoint. You can literally just say like, can you create me a presentation to do this? And it will just do that for you. So it is very, very clever. Not quite there yet, but just to make you aware that that is there, and that is one of the features on the new Copilot laptop. So yeah, ASUS, you have my attention.